Good morning. This is Quintus Curtius here. The date is July 6th, 2024. And this podcast is going to be about a tragic story, a very, very tragic tale. And I just wanted to share my thoughts about this. Every now and then you come across a story that affects you in some ways, emotionally or intellectually, or I don't know, just touches you in some way that you feel like you want to discuss it. And I recently had this experience with a four-part Netflix documentary that I saw a couple weeks ago, and it was about the death. It was called Crime Scene or Crime Story. Let me look here. What's the actual title? It's called Crime Scene: The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel. And it's about the death of a Canadian tourist, a young girl named Elisa Lam, Lam. And some of you may have heard of this story. I had never heard of it at all. I guess it happened back in 2013. And I don't remember hearing about this at all at the time. Nothing. But it truly is a fascinating story for many reasons. And ultimately a very, very sad and tragic story. And I really think that this is the type of thing that, in the hands of a great artist or a great writer or a great filmmaker or playwright or whatever you want to call it, this could really be made into something that could impact a lot of people's lives and really be a force for good in the world. Let me tell you a little bit about the story because maybe some of you have not heard about it either. The basic story here, it starts out as a story of a disappearance and a possible crime. There is a young Canadian tourist, a college student, or a recently graduated college student, I can't remember. She was 21 years old, I know that. I guess she was born in 1991. But she is a young girl of Chinese descent, lives in Canada, and she decides to go on a trip to on the west coast of the United States to tour California. And I guess she has these plans to make Amtrak trips to different cities and use buses and tour the west coast of the United States, which is a great goal, a great object. A lot of young people and old people love to travel, and I think it's a good thing. And while she's on this trip, she stays in Los Angeles for a few days, and she stays at this notorious hotel. It's called the Cecil Hotel. Again, I had never heard of this hotel either, but apparently it's notorious. I guess it was originally built as a luxury hotel in the early 20th century, and with the passing of decades, it had essentially turned into a rundown flop house, which had seen better days, and which is located on Skid Row of Los Angeles. So it's a very, very shady hotel, in the sense that there are a lot of bad things that happened there. There had been, over the years, had been suicides, murders, prostitution, drug use. Apparently, even the famous Night Stalker, serial killer Richard Ramirez had stayed there. So the place was to be dramatic, in some ways, sort of a portal to hell. But anyway, she was staying there, and originally stayed with a couple other girls in one of the rooms there, and I guess they made some complaints about her strange behavior, and the hotel management put her in her own room, moved her to a different room. But anyway, she eventually went missing. Suddenly, her contacts with her family abruptly ended, and her family reported her missing about a week after her last contact with them. And eventually, obviously the Los Angeles Police Department, the LAPD, got involved, and they searched the hotel top to bottom, couldn't find anything. And this was the early days of the internet. So this is, again, 2013. And eventually a lot of these internet sleuths got involved because the police, perhaps mistakenly, I suppose it's debatable, but perhaps mistakenly, posted a video of one of her last known appearances, which is truly unsettling, and you can find it online on the Wikipedia page even of this incident. But it's an elevator video which shows Elisa Lam exhibiting a lot of strange behavior. And she gets into an elevator, presses all the buttons, seems to be looking in and out of the elevator. She makes a lot of strange hand movements. The video is very strange to those of us who are not familiar with what what actually happened, as I'll explain a little bit later. But so there was all these conspiracy theories once this video was published, and internet detectives, amateurs got involved and did nothing really but raise more conspiracy theories. It became a sort of a cult phenomena, I guess you could call it. Well, eventually her body was discovered. A hotel residents of the hotel were complaining of low water pressure and, black-colored water coming out of the faucets and all sorts of grisly types of things. And eventually one of the hotel maintenance workers discovered her body located inside one of the water tanks on the roof of the hotel, and these are big, huge water tanks with heavy lids, 20-pound lids. And she had no clothes. Her clothes were in the tank there with her. She was naked, but there were no signs. The autopsy showed no signs of violence or sexual assault or anything like that. So it became some sort of death investigation at that point. And again, it's the whole thing is just very strange. But to make a long story short, what eventually came out as more and more facts were pieced together, as the autopsy revealed the substances in her system, and the family eventually begrudgingly disclosed that she had suffered from mental illness, which they had not shared with the police originally. What really happened became apparent and explainable. And in some ways, the truth is just very, very tragic, very, very sad. Because this story, the hysteria around her death had now become almost a tornado in itself. There was even an instance, and the documentary talks about this. There was one of the bizarre incidents around this case. A guy who had also stayed at the hotel, a Mexican black metal musician who went by the name Morbid. I forget what his real name is. I think his last name is Vergara or something like that. But this guy got blamed for the girl's disappearance. People were accusing him of having done something, and people were allegedly pointing to some similarities between his songs and his persona. And again, it just goes to show you, if you're looking for a conspiracy, and if you look hard enough, you can always find evidence, quote unquote, of it somewhere. So this poor guy got caught up in the hysteria, and it ruined his life as well. Very sad. The whole thing is just very, very tragic. But anyway, the police investigation and the autopsy finally revealed what happened. And what basically emerges is this. This was a young girl who was suffering from an extreme version of bipolar disorder. And I don't know about you, but before watching this documentary, I did not know very much about bipolarism. I knew that it existed. I knew a little bit about it. I heard, what snippets here and there you can get from the current, media and culture. I knew it was a disorder that involved mood swings, and that it could be very problematic for people. I did not know that in its extreme forms, it can generate like full-blown psychotic episodes, like hallucinations, delusions, self-destructive, sometimes even criminal behavior. So she had been suffering from this for a long time. Extreme stuff. She was on, I guess, a number of different medications, But apparently she had a history of sometimes going off the medications because I guess people that are heavily medicated for bipolarism, they don't like the way it makes them feel. Again, I'm just repeating what I had heard from others. So, what with the timeline and the sequence of events, what essentially happened was this: she got off her medications. Her behavior became more and more erratic, and there's a track record of erratic behavior. Besides her behavior at the hotel, her strange behavior around the hotel, she also, I guess, tried to attend a taping of a Conan O'Brien show, and I guess she was escorted off the premises for disruptive behavior. So apparently what happened was she got off her meds. She essentially slipped into a state of delusion and psychosis, and eventually she made her way up the fire escape, up onto the roof of the building, and jumped in the water tank. And people might say, well, why would anybody do that? Why would that? Well, they don't understand. When someone is under the delusion of being pursued or threatened or harmed by others, they'll do anything. There isn't any reason for it. And once she got into the tank, she couldn't get out, and she eventually took her clothes off as a way to stay afloat. Maybe the water pressure the levels would have gone up and down. She eventually tired, became exhausted, and couldn't get out. And that's what happened. And so her death was ruled as accidental, with the proximate cause being her bipolar disorder. And we know that she got off her medications because the toxicology reports showed extremely low levels of her medications in her system, which would be consistent with the finding of her not taking the medications. So what struck me about this story was, a tale which initially looked very much like a homicide. Everyone was speculating, and it seemed reasonable to assume that she was a victim of a crime. A young girl going to Los Angeles, staying at a flop house, this sort of scary hotel in the middle of Skid Row, where there's homeless people everywhere, and it's not safe after dark. She looked clearly like a victim of maybe a mugging, an abduction, a robbery, a murder, and anyway, it turned out, in truth, the actual story turns out to be perhaps even more tragic. That this was someone who was trying to live a normal life, was trying to maybe break free of her physical limitations in the form of her bipolarism, and she fell victim to her own physiology. And I just found that very, very sad, very tragic. And I don't know what lesson there is really in this. I think there are some lessons. I think maybe the first lesson is we should never jump to conclusions, and we should be very skeptical of conspiracy theories. Sometimes the truth of things is simply more sad than we like to realize. Instead of this being some elaborate conspiracy where the LAPD was covering up things or hiding this or that, maybe it's just the fact that people are human and people make mistakes. Maybe the fact really is, the truly dark fact is that sometimes families don't know what to do. Because I came to this conclusion because I said to myself as I was watching this story, I said, why? Why would a parents let their daughter travel unaccompanied, who obviously has clearly a history of mental illness? Why would you let her go off on her own like that and stay at a place like the Cecil Hotel and think that anything good is going to come out of that? That was my initial reaction. But then I said, you know what? Parents can only do so much. Parents can only do so much. And you have to let people live their lives. If they're an adult, if someone is over the age of 18 and they're an adult, they have freedom. They can do what they want. You can't stop people from doing what they want. It's just a concatenation and a accumulation of very, very tragic situations that led to a very, very tragic event. And, the whole incident just really, really, really struck me. It really resonated with me for reasons that I'm trying to explain. And I don't know, maybe other people don't see it that way. Maybe other people don't find it as unsettling and as tragic as I do. But I just found it on so many levels. This type of thing. The family had tried to keep it private. Apparently, they didn't disclose the extent of her mental illness to the police, which I think should have been disclosed. I think at early stages, because I think it would have saved a lot of time in the investigation. But for some people, it's a matter of privacy, and they don't. It's something that they don't. Some cultures they don't feel comfortable doing that. But for me, it was educational because I never realized that bipolarism could be so extreme. I did not realize that it can produce psychotic episodes and hallucinations and things like that. I did not realize. I thought it was simply a matter of mood swings. You alternate between highs and lows. And I guess there are some versions of that, but I guess in the extreme states, it can be much worse. And also, I just thought it was very, very revealing of human nature how this incident was jumped on by the internet sleuths and these attention seekers on the internet who basically think that they're helping and end up doing far more damage than they do good. They piled on this musician who had nothing to do with anything, and his life was almost made unlivable, and he talks about that in the documentary as well. So I don't know. There's just a lot of. It's just a very, very good story. Good in the sense that it's. I learned a lot from it. But what do you think? I'd like to hear your opinions. I mean, what if you're familiar with this story, or if you do see the documentary? Let me know what you think in the comments. What are your opinions of this? Because I'm curious. I really would like to know, because I do find that talking about these things does help us maybe, I don't know, bring them in some ways to closure in our own minds. What can we conclude from this? What lessons maybe can be learned, if any? So let me know what you think. So I'll leave it at that. And this is Quintus Curtius, and we'll talk soon.